When I was 14, I lived with my parents and older sister in a house located in a quiet, rural neighborhood. We had a large yard, and it was a peaceful place. This particular incident happened one night when my parents were away. I can't remember exactly where they went, and my sister was at a friend's house. That evening, my best friend Drake came over to hang out. We decided to head down to the basement to play video games. Our basement was comfortable, with carpeted floors, a large couch, and a big TV. I had my PlayStation set up there, and we were having a good time. The basement also had a sliding glass door that opened to the backyard. The blinds on the door were usually left halfway closed, though we typically closed them fully at night. I'd forgotten to do so this time. After a while, we suddenly heard a knock on the glass door. Drake and I looked over at the same time, startled. My first thought was that maybe my sister had come home and forgotten her keys, but this was strange. Our family never used the basement door to enter the house. We always used the front door, the one connected to the garage. As we stared, I realized it wasn't my sister. Instead, it was a woman I didn't recognize. She wasn't a neighbor, and it felt odd to see someone there, especially since we lived far from other houses and rarely saw strangers in the area. Drake and I were both confused and a little uneasy. The woman moved closer and knocked again. Then, to our shock, she tried to open the door. I stood up and took a cautious step toward it. I called out, asking who she was, but her response was muffled and unclear. She knocked again and asked to be let in. I firmly told her no and yelled for her to leave. The woman didn't respond but wandered off into the backyard. Drake and I quickly locked all the doors in the house, as my dad had instructed when I called him to explain the situation. After ensuring everything was secure, we tried to settle back down to play video games, assuming the woman had left. I also closed the blinds completely to block the view of the backyard. About 30 minutes later, we were startled by a loud crash. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the basement. Without hesitation, Drake and I bolted upstairs and locked ourselves in my bedroom. I immediately called the police, explaining what had happened. While waiting for the police, we could hear faint noises coming from downstairs, but we stayed hidden and tried not to think about what was happening. When the officers arrived, they found the woman in the basement. She had shattered the sliding glass door with an old lawn chair from our backyard. The police arrested her, and we later learned that she was under the influence of drugs. I never found out why she targeted our house, but I was relieved that the police arrived quickly and no one was hurt. I work as an Uber driver in my city, and one night I was working a later shift than usual. I'd had something come up in the morning, so I didn't start driving until well after 8 p.m. This was my first time working this late, so I wasn't sure how busy it would be. By 11 p.m., I'd only completed 4 trips, and was even considering switching to Uber Eats to see if I could make more money. Just as I was about to switch, a new ride request came through. It was a 35-minute drive, which sounded good since longer trips mean better pay. I accepted it and headed to the pickup location, which was a train station not far from me. When I got there, I slowly drove around the empty parking lot, looking for my passenger. After making a full loop and seeing no one, I parked and waited. The station lot was completely deserted, and it didn't even look like passenger trains were running at that hour. I thought the person might have entered the wrong location, but before I could text them, I noticed a man approaching my car. He was wearing a dark sweatshirt with the hood pulled up. Aside from confirming the ride was his, he didn't say a word. He got in the back seat, and I began the drive. Throughout the ride, the man stayed completely silent, not even pulling out his phone. He just sat there, staring ahead. I didn't want to be the driver who forces conversation, so I focused on driving. A couple of times, I glanced at him through the rearview mirror and saw his eyes locked on mine. He didn't look away, even when I did. For some reason, it felt incredibly unsettling. After a tense 35 minutes, we reached the drop-off location. However, it wasn't an address. It was a pinpointed spot on the map, at the edge of an open field, shrouded in dense fog. I parked and looked at the man through the mirror. He wasn't moving. Then he spoke. "Get out," he said in a low, commanding voice. I turned around to face him, unsure if I'd heard him right. He met my eyes with a chilling stare and repeated, "Get out." I froze in fear, my body tensing up. Before I could figure out what to do, I saw movement in the corner of my eye. Several men, all wearing dark hoodies and carrying bats or knives, emerged from the fog and ran toward my car. Panic took over. I quickly shifted the car into drive and tried to escape, but they managed to open the 2 back doors and started climbing in. The man inside the car grabbed at me trying to open my door, probably intending to push me out. I accelerated as fast as I could, and as the car gained speed, the man inside lost his balance and fell back into the seat. Moments later, he jumped out of the moving car and onto the road. I kept driving and didn't look back. Eventually, I pulled into a gas station a few miles away, trembling as I noticed both back doors were still open and swinging. There were dents all over my car, likely from the men hitting it as I drove off. I called the police and an officer met me at the gas station to take my statement. Another officer went to the field where it had all happened, but the group was gone. However, they did find a phone on the road, the same phone used to book the ride. It must have fallen out of the man's pocket when he jumped from my car. The phone turned out to be stolen, reported missing less than an hour before I picked the man up. It seemed like an elaborate plan to rob people, and I shudder to think what might have happened if I hadn't managed to get away. They probably wouldn't have just let me go, or allowed me to call the police immediately. I know I was incredibly lucky to escape that night. I'm a junior in high school, and since I don't have a car, I usually walk or ride my bike to get around. Because of this, I encounter a lot of people on the street. Most of the time, it's not a problem. I live in a decent town and go to a good public school. While it's not private, it's considered one of the nicer schools in the area. My neighborhood, however, is in the lower income part of town. Not bad, but definitely not as nice as where many of my friends live. This story revolves around a man my close friends and I refer to as the crackhead. The first time I saw him was one summer when I was walking to the park to play basketball. He passed by me and said something I couldn't understand. I just ignored him and kept walking, thinking nothing of it at the time. The second time I saw him, I was at a pizza place near my house with some friends. I got a call from my dad telling me we were leaving for church in 5 minutes, so I needed to get home quickly. I started running home as fast as I could when the same guy stopped me. "Hey, why are you running?" he asked. I was already in a hurry, so I found it odd that he would try to stop me. At that point, nothing too alarming had happened yet. The next encounter was much creepier. One evening, my girlfriend and I were watching a movie in my living room. The way my house is set up, there are windows directly behind the couch where we were sitting. Suddenly, I had an unsettling feeling and turned around. I saw someone standing outside, looking in through the open blinds. I couldn't be sure it was the same man, but he had a similar build and wore similar clothes. I pointed it out to my girlfriend, and when she looked, the man casually walked away. I brushed it off, trying to convince myself it wasn't a big deal, and we went back to watching the movie. Things escalated when my best friend P came over to hang out. We were walking to a store to grab snacks when the crackhead appeared, walking toward us. He greeted us with a simple hello. We said hello back and kept walking, trying to ignore him. After a while, I noticed P was unusually quiet. When I asked if he was okay, he turned to me and said, "You know he said your name, right? Did you tell him your name?" That's when it hit me. I had never told that man my name. Another time, P and another friend, K, came over, and we decided to walk to the park at night to play basketball. As we passed the crackhead, he didn't say anything. Instead, he just stared at us. We noticed he started following us, so we picked up our pace. Eventually, he stopped, but the experience left us shaken. The scariest encounter happened early one morning. I woke up around 5 a.m. and decided to go for a run. I wrestle for my school, so I run regularly to stay fit, and I couldn't sleep that night anyway. As I was finishing my route and about to turn onto my street, I noticed the man standing near a car at the corner, staring at me. I turned onto my street, and when I glanced back, he was gone. By the time I got home, it was around 6 a.m., and daylight had broken. Despite this, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me. Maybe it was paranoia, but I didn't know what to make of it. At this point, I don't know what his intentions are or why he's so fixated on me. While I'm a big guy, I know that being too confident in my size could lead to trouble. It's better to stay cautious, and I've been doing just that ever since.
Thank you for watching. If you found these stories gripping, don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling content. For another hair-raising tale, check out our suggested video. And if you're hungry for more eerie encounters, dive into our playlist featuring similar chilling narratives.